Hello, everyone. It's time to Elite Speak. And I am at you with an AEW Dark episode 46 review, August 11, 2020. Dark was without Excalibur yet again, but I think this is due to the fact that this was taped a week ago, and Excalibur at that time was still not on the show, so there's rumors going around that he may show up this week on Dynamite and therefore will be on next week's Dark episode. So we can only hope, because Excalibur is missed, in my opinion. I miss his energy on the commentary table. Could definitely use him. But let's get into this review. The show opened up with the match of Lee Johnson versus Rey Fenix. Lee, if you didn't know, is a cabinet member of MJF's for his MJF 2020 campaign, running for his chance to become AEW World Heavyweight Champion. He provided some hilarious moments that not many people got to see, particularly one on social media involving Lee Johnson backstage with Wardlow. Wardlow basically bullied Lee into talking good about MJF, even though he really doesn't want anything to do with the campaign. A nice little story element there. But both started the match by locking up as Rey takes Lee Johnson down to the mat. Lee then gets the slight upper hand as both get back to their feet. Lee Johnson keeps pace with Rey as Rey Fenix gets frustrated because not everything is going to according to plan for him. Fenix then, after throwing a slight tantrum, goes for a handshake to Lee, but Rey double crosses him instead. The match later spilled outside as Rey gets a chop onto Lee as he lays on the side of the ring apron. Rey intentionally breaks the countout, then throws Lee back into the ring. Lee later gets a missile drop kick onto Rey via the top rope and goes for a cover and gets a 2 count. Lee later gets a slam onto Rey for a 2 count as both are slow to rise afterwards. Not long after this sequence, Fenix then hits his spinning muscle buster finish on Lee for the win. Lee Johnson looked good in the ring with Rey Fenix. They gave him quite a bit of offense, and it's clear that they want him to look good for MJF. But he came out with a loss here, and I don't think MJF will take kindly to that. We shall see on Dynamite this week or tonight. Next match was Shawn Spears versus Alex Chamberlain. Alex Chamberlain's making his AEW debut. Spears, by the way, Chamberlain looked good. Spears gets a side headlock takedown on Alex and keeps him in a headlock for quite a bit after this. Spears later gets upset with Alex after he gets a tackle after Spears gets hit with a tackle. He then rolls out of the ring in frustration and then has a chat with Tully. Spears then goes in on Alex outside of the ring with multiple strikes to the face, then caps it off with a knee to the face for good measure. Spears later ends the match with a merciful DVD, which he calls the C4, to end the match. Later, as he was walking up the ramp, Spears decides to load up his glove and went back out to ringside and lays out Alex Chamberlain for the exclamation point. Spears was sending a message. To who? We don't know. We shall see. The 4 Horsemen thing is still looming over his head. I still think he's going to be a part of that. We just don't know when. Next match was the Gun Club, Austin and Billy Gunn versus M. Badu, making his AEW debut. He looked good, by the way. And Shawn Dean. Austin and Shawn started the match off. Both have each other's number for a bit. Then Austin gets the upper hand as he later tags in Billy. Captain Dean immediately tags in and Badu as they stare each other down. Both Billy and Badu had a stare down. They both locked up later as Billy tries to take Badu down with a tackle, but Badu didn't budge. He then knocks Billy down as he went to Austin for encouragement after this. Billy later gets a back elbow from Badu, and he then gets some air on a splash in the corner onto Billy. Soon after this, Billy makes a tag to Shawn Dean, and not long after, Badu gets tagged back in after short work from Dean. Dean didn't do too much before he tagged Badu back into the match. Austin later gets the hot tag and takes down both Dean and Badu. He later gets a pump handle slam onto Dean for a close 2 count. Later, Austin hits his finish, the hip toss neck breaker, which looks good because he hits it so quick, onto Dean for the win. The Gun Club gets a victory. I thought it was a nice match. Austin looked good, as well as both Shawn Dean and Badu. Good stuff. Next matchup was Michael Stevens making his AEW debut versus Kip Sabian. Stevens and Sabian locked it up to start. A lot of these matches started with lockups. Kip later goes for a kiss to Penelope Ford, but pays for it with a kick from Stevens. Stevens later goes to get Penelope's attention not long after the kick, but he paid for it. Kip got a lot of offense in on Stevens after this, and Kip later mocked Steven and stomped a mud hole in him afterwards for good measure. Then Sabian goes for his golf-like punt kick, and he actually connects with it. Steven then rises up and gyrates in a few ring corners, and it turns out that he was baiting Kip to come on in all along. Stevens then goes for a move, but gets springboarded into a turnbuckle, a top turnbuckle. Kip later finishes him off with a rope-assisted neck breaker for the 1-2-3. After the match, as the camera was on Kip, he cut a short promo. He stated that he's tired of these matches. He won the first ever AEW match. This to me means that sooner or later Kip will find his way back onto Dynamite in some kind of feud, one would hope. Kip has a lot to offer. He's young, and he looked good in the match. What more do you need? Next match was Griff Garrison. Who is he? I know who he is. And Brian Pillman Jr. versus Private Party. Brian and Cassidy started the match off. Pillman knocks Cassidy down, then both run the ropes for 2 arm drags via Cassidy. Cassidy hit these arm drags after both were running the ropes back and forth for a bit. Mark Quinn showed a bit of a mean streak on Brian as he stomped him a bit. Quinn then tags Cassidy back in the match, whom tagged Quinn back in to do a springboard leg drop. Quinn then tags out to Cassidy for some of their patented double team maneuvers. Griff later gets the tag, and he beats down Cassidy for a bit, then kicks Cassidy in the face for a 2 count. Quinn later gets a hot tag, and he takes out both Garrison and Pillman as he flies all over the place with cross bodies and the usual Private Party aerial maneuvers. Private Party later wins the match with a splash/leg drop combo onto Griff Garrison. The finish showed some influence of Matt Hardy's, because that's a move that both the Hardys used on their opponents back in the day. A splash and a leg drop, double team style. So Matt Hardy is showing, he's teaching them a bit of things behind the scenes and on screen, which is nice to see. The match was good. The Private Party didn't make too many mistakes this time around, which is nice to see. Next match was the Jurassic Express versus Corey Hollis, Pineapple Pete, and Aaron Solo. This was a 6-man tag. Solo and Marco Stunt started off the match. Stunt got a head scissors on Solo via the use of the ropes early on. Luchasaurus then gets tagged in and makes short work of all 3 of Solo, Pineapple Pete, and Corey Hollis. Solo later kicks Luchasaurus in the face, but Solo then gets drilled in his own face. He gets drilled with a big boot, with a kick from Luchasaurus. And Solo later gets triple teamed via suplex to crossbody from Jurassic Express. Aaron Solo later tagged in Hollis, and Pineapple Pete gets a Pineapple Pete then gets a Northern Lights suplex onto Jungle Boy. Pineapple Pete later went to wind up for a punch, but instead he got rocked by a Jungle Boy kick. Stunt later hits a Razor's Edge onto Pineapple Pete. Marco Stunt hit a Razor's Edge from the corner of the ring to Pineapple Pete. That was quite the sight. Jurassic Express later win off of a Marco Stunt 450 splash to Pineapple Pete for the 1-2-3. Next matchup, we have a returning TH2, Jack Evans and Angelico versus the Natural Nightmares, QT Marshall and Dustin Rhodes, accompanied to the ring by Allie and Brandy Rhodes. Angelico and QT started off the match. QT got to work on Angelico's arm, and then later Angelico returns the favor. He worked on QT's arm as well. Jack Evans later gets tagged in, and so did Dustin at this time. Evans showboats a bit and gets knocked down by Dustin for his troubles. He then rakes QT's eyes later in the match to get an upper hand on QT. They continued to get cheap shots in behind the ref's back, and this was TH2 getting the cheap shots in on the Natural Nightmares. Later, Jack Evans was too busy cutting a promo in ring that he let QT get a tag in on Dustin as he ran wild on both TH2 members. Dustin later heads to the top rope and took out all of TH2 with a crossbody. Actually, no, I think it was a senton. Dustin took out Evans with his finish, the Final Reckoning, for the 1-2-3 win. TH2 lost upon their return as a tag team. They are back to losing, which is sad. When is TH2 going to get their just desserts? When are they going to start compiling up wins? Because they're as good as anybody in the tag team division. But you never know it because they don't get a shot. Unfortunately, some fans judge talent based on how they're booked, and that's not fair to the talent. But hopefully things will get better. They'll have their time soon enough. Next is a co-main event, and this was Penelope Ford versus Rachael Ellering, who made her AEW debut during the Women's Tag Team Cup tournament, which was nice. This is her second appearance. The match started with a headlock takedown via Penelope. Rachael later shows her power on Ford with a flying elbow. Kip later uses a leaf blower on Rachael as it distracts her to allow Ford to get the upper hand. An odd choice of weapon from Kip. Penelope later shows no respect to Ellering as she puts boot to Ellering's face repeatedly as she was holding on to Ellering's arm. Ellering later chops Ford to death and follows it up with a senton splash. She later hits a spine buster on Ford for a real close 2 count, and that spine buster looked nice. I liked it. Ford later hits her handspring cutter to Ellering, and then after that, not long after that, she hit a perfect plex for the win. Personally, I don't like Fisherman Suplex as a finisher, or a perfect plex, or whatever you want to call it. I think Penelope could go with something more devastating to end her matches, but that's just me. But overall, it was a good match, solid match. I liked it. I believe AEW should sign Ellering up. Why not? Your division could use her boost. Use the boost. We'll see what they go for in the coming weeks. We'll see what they do. And then you have your main event of the night, your other co-main event, SCU versus the Butcher and the Blade. This was a good match. I liked it. Blade and Kazarian started the match off. Both locked it up. and pushed one another into the various corners. They continued to lock it up for a while until Blade finally knocked Kazarian down. Butcher and Daniels later entered the ring, and things quickly picked up. Butcher came in and wrecks Daniels. Butcher later tags out to Blade. SCU then gets the one-up on Butcher and Blade as they go wild on him. Daniels hits a moonsault onto Blade as part of a double-team maneuver with his partner Kazarian. Butcher then gets tagged in to face Daniels. He hits Daniel with a backbreaker 2 times. The Butcher did. Daniels later bites Butcher on the head to get out of a bear hug. Daniels went for his Angel's Wings, but the Butcher rushed to the Blade's defense. Full Death then ends the match. Butcher and the Blade defeated SCU as a result. And this Full Death was hit on Christopher Daniels, I believe. Solid match. It served its purpose. It made Butcher and the Blade look good, and all is well. The Butcher and the Blade have been on quite a roll lately, looking good and powerful, as they should have been booked to start. Good stuff. SCU played their part as well and made them look good. As the pros they are. That was your AEW Dark review for August 11, 2020. Episode 46. Thanks for watching / listening, and I will catch you with the Dynamite review tomorrow. Have a good one.